Nuge is huge. That's the reaction. That's the day after reaction. Welcome back. Edmonton Oilers 3, Anaheim Ducks 1. And besides Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scoring his 100th point, it was kind of a boring game against the Anaheim Ducks. Wasn't the most exciting, the most thrilling like the game we had against LA, even though that one was a little slower, but the stakes were a bit higher. But you can't complain with 2 points, regardless of who the opposition is. The Edmonton Oilers are now 1 point back of the Vegas Golden Knights for first place in the Pacific, and I think the Western Conference. I'd have to double check the standings. So right now, we're in a position in the season where every point matters. Yes, they've clinched a playoff spot, but just one win or two here can really change who we play in the playoffs. It could either go from playing the LA Kings to playing Winnipeg or Calgary if we get first place in the West or the Pacific or one of those wildcard teams. But let's bring it back to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. We are literally witnessing greatness before our eyes with this Edmonton Oilers team. 3 Oilers now have 100 points in one season. I thought that would have happened with the likes of Jordan Eberle, Taylor Hall, Magnus Pajärvi. And apologies if I'm bringing back any PTSD from the decade of darkness, but those players were the ones who, they were billed to be the future for the Edmonton Oilers, to be those players who would put up 100-point seasons. But I don't think any of them were expected to do what Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, and now Ryan Nugent-Hopkins are doing in this season. And if we're talking about the decade of darkness real quick, Zach Lange writes on OilersNation.com about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and much like it, his willingness to be great never faded. When he stepped into the league, things were bleak at Edmonton. That 2011-12 season saw him as the number 2 center behind Shawn Horcoff. He was an easy target for other teams who figured they could constantly overmatch the rookie. And, as his career progressed with the Edmonton Oilers, sure, there was a lot of dark times, but he was always consistent, a very smart player, a player that coaches always praise because he was so good in almost any situation on the ice. The point totals never really reflected how good of a hockey player Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is and was. And now Nuge becomes the 6th player in NHL history to record his 100-plus point season in his 12th season or later, joining Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull, Johnny Busick, Jean Rattel, and Steven Stamkos. I apologize if I butchered any of those names. And of course, as Zach Lange wrote on OilersNation.com, he has been through it over the last 12 years with the Oilers, and it's not been an easy road. There were some terrible teams in the early 2010s, and it's even taken the organization a long time to build something around him. And when he could have pushed the Oilers for a big payday on June 2021, when his contract was up, he instead inked an incredibly friendly 8-year, $5.1 million contract. He's an Oiler for life. And if we just reflect on that as well, there were times where the fan base wanted him traded. They thought he was useless because he wasn't putting up those point totals. And I remember back in 2021, I was on the LRT after an Oilers game, and this fan, he wasn't happy because the Oilers just lost, and he said, the Oilers should trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for Carey Price. Things you hear on the LRT after a game. And honestly, Carey Price wasn't even playing at the time. He was injured and hasn't played since. But back to the game. Quickly, shout out to Jack Campbell, who had a solid night in net. Yes, he didn't face a ton of high danger chances, but regardless, he just stood on his head and made the saves that he needed to make, and hopefully that boosts his confidence to maybe potentially a start or 2 in the playoffs if need be. Right now, we need Jack Campbell to just be confident and potentially reliable in case anything goes wrong with Stuart Skinner. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, and knock on wood. With that being said, thank you for tuning into the day after reaction. Myself, Waz. Have yourself a fantastic Thursday. Friday, Oilers are back 2 p.m. against San Jose on Saturday. Like, comment, and subscribe. Head to OilersNation.com for more.